Good morning. And thanks, Phil. And hopefully it's as nice a morning where you are as it is here in the East Lansing area. Just well, gorgeous conditions. A couple clouds out there, but very comfortable temperatures. And we've got one more day of that, courtesy of some Canadian origin air over the region. I'll talk about that in just a second. But let's look at the last week here, starting off with temperatures. On the left side here are our mean temperature departures from normal for the previous week. And especially given the last few days that have been cooler than normal, we see a range and a lot of northern and eastern portions of the state actually had their average temperatures average out a little bit below normal, cooler than normal, and then increasing as you go west and south of that. But again, western part of the state pretty close to the climatological normals. And given that, not much change in terms of the patterns with our seasonal degree day totals. These are on the right-hand side here through the 12th. And again, these are base 50 corn growing degree days beginning on the 1st of May, or assuming that's our start date. And the pattern you see there ranges from some minor deficits, so a little bit less than normal accumulations in the far northern part of the state, and then some surpluses as you go south, especially across the southern half of lower Michigan and down towards the Indiana and Ohio border area. In terms of calendar time, these surpluses, we're talking about a few calendar days, generally one side or the other, again, a little bit behind normal in the far north, and then several days, maybe as much as a week ahead of normal here, again, towards the southern border of the state. That pattern we've seen for most of the growing season thus far, and it continues. More importantly here, and I'm going to talk more about moisture and about water, and it really depends on where you were. And in some areas, we're very fortunate to pick up rainfall here over the last week. But in general, over most of the state, we had less than normal or below normal rainfall totals. You can see here in a lot of the state, there was less than half an inch of rainfall. The greens are areas of the darker green, actually over an inch, but most areas were far less than that. We did get some, and this, no, here, this does not include the rainfall we saw yesterday and some of the driest areas in the state. And we'll put the central and especially the east central lower peninsula now in that category. We did see some rainfall in those areas, which is great to see. But there also are still areas that were missed. And you can see those again in the light blue. There are too many of those. And really one of the major the topics here, themes that we're looking at, and so we've talked about this before, is the lack of water, especially as we come into some of the most water, the greatest water needs of our growing season. One last thing here, you can see if you look closely, there's a nice little west-northwest to east-southeast line of precipitation here over half an inch. That was associated with a severe thunderstorm on Monday evening. Some of you in the central part of the state probably were alarmed. Well, I was, just caught me a little bit off guard, but that was a severe thunderstorm. Actually, it was one-time tornadic and formed way over in Ottawa and Kent County, and then moved east-southeast through Ionia and Clinton, Shiawassee, all the way over almost to Port Huron here along I-69, and caused some problems. Fortunately, the severe weather was limited, mostly trees down and some power outages. But again, one of those that made it all the way across the state here at not the best time of the day. It was late in the evening on Monday, when we're a little bit less apt to be watching out the window and so forth for this. But again, that actually did, on a positive sense, it did, you can see, lead to some rainfall in some particular areas. It just wasn't enough. And in terms of the moisture here, looking at the state, most areas have shown declines in soil moisture over the last week. The graphic I'm showing here on the left-hand side is something called the Quick Drought Response Index, or it's Quick Dry is its acronym. And I bring this up because I think it probably, at least in my opinion, in this particular case, I think it does the best job of describing what we have seen over the last several weeks in terms of lack of rainfall, and also because of increased atmospheric demand. Our potential evapotranspiration rates have been, as we've talked about, unusually high, and that has resulted in you can see much of lower Michigan, portions now of western upper Michigan as well, in this yellow to brown color, indicating drier than normal conditions. The quick dry index is a combination of both satellite derived and then some surface observations of precipitation, but its real strength is that it identifies areas where we see rapid transitions from wet to dry and vice versa. And I think, again, you can see the driest area with this index across central lower eastward into the thumb, into east central Michigan. And everything we have, all the observations are really consistent with that. We also saw a significant expansion in abnormally dry conditions on the right-hand side here from the U.S. Drought Monitor, now just about 40%. That was as of the 5th. Note that we have a new issuance of this coming a little bit later this morning. We're always a week behind on that, and there probably will be even more increases. But last week, the abnormally dry area in Michigan increased almost 13%, again, up to about 40% of the state as a whole. It was also the first appearance of the D1 or moderate drought category. You can see that here, indicated over portions of Gratiot and surrounding counties in the central lower. And again, the good news is some of those areas got some rainfall yesterday, but there's a longer term deficit here. Some of these deficits are on the order of 3 to 4 inches of water just over the last 2 months. If you're wondering how much water are we talking about, it's a significant amount of water. Well, let's look at the forecast here and prospects for more rain, if any, and there are some positive signs, or well, at least that weren't there just a couple of days ago. Very little on the radar to speak of. High pressure you can see centered over from the Upper Peninsula into northern Ontario. Canadian air mass, relatively low humidities, dew point temperatures are down in the low 50s, beautiful conditions, and very, very nice air temperatures as well. So we have one more day of this particular pattern that we've been in for the last several. High temperatures generally in the mid and upper 70s to near 80 as you go into the south. It's just a gorgeous day to be outside here today. Light to variable winds, mostly sunny skies. Today will be just about perfect to be outside. But there are changes on the horizon here. This is tomorrow morning. You can see high pressure still here, but it has shifted off to the east. That will result in a little bit of return flow, and temperatures a few degrees, probably about 3 or 4 degrees warmer than they are today. So noticeably a little bit warmer. Also, the next weather system here off to our west, you can see the green here with some scattered showers. We will see the threat of, and I really, in this case, I think we almost need to call it isolated showers possible late in the day on Friday, tomorrow afternoon, in western portions of the state. I don't think we'll see anything in the east. The high pressure will still be there. The air will still be dry. If we do see anything, it very likely will be confined to the far west. And then on Saturday morning, you can see more in the way of moisture working its way slowly eastward into Michigan. And so the next chance for any significant precipitation here is going to be this weekend, mostly during the day, Saturday, overnight Saturday, and into Sunday. And it's worth mentioning here, if I would have given this briefing here 3 days ago, things were not looking very positive for rainfall this weekend. But as we've gotten closer to the event, as sometimes happens, there's more moisture there. The synoptic disturbance that's leading to the rainfall is now stronger, looks a little bit stronger than it did before. And so things are looking up, or looking more positive for some, or at least some rainfall here over the weekend. And again, the greatest threat, I think, will be late Saturday into early Sunday. And I have added just one slide here really quickly, a couple of images. This is a forecast of conditions on Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Along with the green here are forecast precipitation totals. You can see that actually now we have it's weak, but it's still a low pressure system that's forecast to move up through the Great Lakes region. And again, 3 or 4 days ago, that really wasn't there. in the guidance. So I'm thinking that the trend is certainly here wetter than it was. So we're looking at least 50-50 odds of seeing some precipitation. And not only that, if we look here on the right-hand side, these are forecast precipitation totals. We actually might see a quarter to half inch in some of these areas. And there's a potential, given higher humidities, it will be noticeably warmer this weekend than it has been, especially over the last couple of days, and more humid. We will see our temperatures well into the 80s for highs and higher dew point temperatures, but that's for precipitation, that's going to be a good thing because there's more of that raw material there. And you can see again in this forecast that for at least for the southern half of lower Michigan, the odds are increasing for significant rainfall here this weekend. Now, after that, it's looking like very summer-like conditions for next week, with some chance for mainly isolated or scattered convection showers and thunderstorms. But this is the forecast precipitation total potential through next Thursday morning. You can see that most of it is here across the south. That's the highest totals. And a lot of that is associated with what I just talked about here this weekend. Much less as you go north. And again, for much of the state, I think the bottom line is here, it's still going to be a drier than normal week once again, for especially for the northern portions of the state. But I think as a whole, the odds are that this drier than normal trend does continue, but it is looking better this weekend. Potential evapotranspiration rates are right around 0.18 to 0.2 of an inch per day on average, not too far away from what the climatology says for this time of the year. So again, but it is less than what we've experienced and observed for many of the last few weeks here. We have had above normal rates, and it should be closer to normal. That's, I think, a little bit of a positive, but it still will obviously be a factor in terms of water supply. Well, let's finish up here with the medium range, because there are some fairly, I think, solid directions here in our guidance. If we look at the jet stream pattern, the big question is this big upper air ridge, the heat dome. It's been called a number of things, some we can't even share here with in polite company. But this ridge is a key to our forecast, because depending on how close it gets to us and how strong with the north-south, the amplitude of this will have a large bearing on our forecast. But most of the guidance, the vast majority of the forecast guidance suggests that the axis of this will be out over the Great Plains. And that leaves Michigan here on the eastern downward edge of that, but still very, very high likelihood of warmer than normal mean temperatures. And unfortunately, given where it is, with some of the airflow coming more out of the west and northwest than out of the south, we will also see probably drier than normal conditions. And so both the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks are very, very similar here in calling for warmer and maybe drier than normal conditions as we move into late July. This is one I don't show as often, but it is an extension of what you just saw. Again, 8 to 10, or the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day are almost identical. This is the period beyond that for the last week of July and then into early August. And you can see here a very similar pattern. This outlook is based largely on that forecast, medium range forecast guidance, but it's also consistent. So again, the message here as we look at these different forecast products, most of them are pointing in the same direction. So it all suggests collectively that the last part of really the last half of July and maybe into the first part of August is likely to be towards that warm and dry scenario. Given where we are, of course, with our crop stages, this is a concern, and it means that the water is going to be even more important, because this is when we see the peak demands. And this is not true, not just in Michigan, but also watching across the central and eastern Corn Belt, because there are areas there also that are without enough or adequate water that are now entering these sensitive stages of development, like pollination for corn. Something to keep an eye on, because it very likely, given the market factors and the tight markets that we've had, weather will be one of the conversations. And most of the Corn Belt here, we're looking at the same forecast for warmer and drier than normal as we enter that part of the year. So summarizing, one more beautiful day here, cool, but we will see a warming trend beginning tomorrow and then into the weekend and into next week. Looking a little bit more positive for some rainfall here over the weekend. We'll keep our fingers crossed that turns out that way. And then for next week, a very, very summer-like. It does look like the next major weather system after this weekend, probably the middle of next week, Wednesday or so timeframe. And we could see, certainly we're hoping to see some precipitation with that system as well, but also lead to a little bit, at least a temporary cool down in our temperatures. We could see some 90-degree maximum temperatures once again. Wouldn't be surprised early next week. And that's consistent also with the medium range guides, as you just saw, warmer and generally drier than normal as we go towards the end of the month and into early August. And with that, I will move ahead and introduce our topic for virtual breakfast next week, next Thursday morning. And as you can see, it is you get a sort of a 2-for-1 or more bonus, because our session is a question and answer session with some of our MSU Extension field crop specialists. So bring your questions. The hard ones, doesn't matter. Bring those with, and you can ask those questions next Thursday. And with that, I will turn it back here to Phil to talk about, I think, credits, etc. So Phil.
All right, thank you, Jeff.